I took the picture and I sent it to Steve as part of the graveyard project. And then Steve came back to me and said, that's John Marsh of Sheffield Wednesday. Oh, wow. I mean, I haven't discovered it, but it were all covered up. I cleaned it, got all the moss off, and it's just a shame that there's nothing here to say who this guy is.
The more you realise what these people have achieved and how almost their lives have been dominated by service to the club, you realise that it's important to get that through the book. And again, whilst you have a team achieving certain success or not, behind that is the guy that still has to put the nets up, the guy that still has to white line. Because quite frankly, if these people weren't there putting in their time and effort, the team wouldn't get to the pitch. That has inspired us more and more to tell their stories.
The actual making of the game is a very complex process and involves a great many people. But Penistone has a very strong shout at being at the forefront of the making of the modern game of association football. It's that strong, it's that powerful.
Bluebells, where have you gone? 'Cause you were right there at this time, I think last year. I miss the bluebells in the field next to my house. Where have you gone?
It was a typical match day which I go down to watch Penistone Church play football. And on this particular moment in the clubhouse, I was looking at a photograph, or an old photograph, and it made me think about what is the history of this club. And I asked David, do you have a history, recorded history of the club? And he said, no. You know, we have a club at that time, probably 113, 114 years old, and there's nothing actually recorded. And I was thinking about the work I'd been doing with Steve on the churchyard and the characters we were finding. And I think you need to bring history back to life. And 115 years, there's going to be some real history there.
Richard and I were working on a project at the burial ground of St John's Church in Penistone, and what we discovered was that the graves went back to around 1650, 1660, up to about 1900. And as we were going round, we started to find quite a lot of graves that we thought we'd like to know a little bit more about that. I wonder who that is. I wonder what that's related to. And so once we'd completed the project, which took us about two years really, we started to look at the stories behind the people that we thought were interesting. And we came up with quite a few names that seemed to be linked to stories that we related to Kevin Neal. And Kevin Neal had put together a number of academic papers that had been published. And so we decided to contact and look at his papers.
My research had been a long time ongoing, and I was frustrated because I couldn't get this information out there. I wanted to get this information to Penistone. We both said we need to bring this out and we need to do a history of the football club. And I didn't need any persuading. He was game for it, and we got Richard on board as well. And we took things from there.
So that's how it all started, and it was probably just 2 years ago, October, November 2020, that we had a meeting, just a very simple meeting at Penistone Church Football Club with Dave Hampshire, Richard and Jim Hinchcliffe, and we suggested we might do this book, and they gave us their full support. They directed us to a lot of their archive material and people that they thought we'd like to talk to. And so we'd got the okay from the club to start the story.
And so we moved down to the church probably in midweek, and there was some interest in us writing the book, and which was exciting for me because I just wanted to get the story out. And I realised that through the work we've been doing at the church, we could bring characters back to life, not knowing at that stage, to be quite honest, what we were going to find. One of my roles was to go and find the research, spend time in the archives and interview people. And I went through all the almanacs, the parish magazines, the parochial magazines, and I think it was just amazing, to be quite honest, to see that little chapter about it was decided and agreed to form a club. I thought, this is it. This is the bit that says Penistone Church Football Club is going to be formed. And I thought, I've got it. You know, and that was something I really enjoyed, just finding that paragraph, because I knew we got it in writing, that it was agreed to be formed. And I couldn't send it to Steve fast enough, to be quite honest.
The photographs helped stimulate an awful lot. There's one in particular which showed the team outside of the Spread Eagle in front of a charabanc. Peaky Blinders is nothing on this. It's absolutely fantastic. The dress of the day, and there's these guys ready to get into that charabanc and go off to play the game. I've started to put names to faces, and I feel as though I know them. Beautiful, beautiful photograph. And in fact, the 1910 charabanc one and the 1908 one outside just opposite the Legion, I've actually had copies made. I'm hanging them up at home, much to the annoyance of my wife. So I've got Penistone Church in the south of France, you know, as a reminder, because I can't let go of it. Those shots are just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
If I was to be able to thank all the people that have contributed, I mean, what I say is I only wrote it. And what they say is, well, we only found the information and, well, we only designed it, but that can't work without us all working together. So it's not one person's book, it's everybody's.
It would be wrong to sort of write a history starting from 1906. We've got to go way back in time and trace the true football inheritance that Penistone Church Football Club has got. John Marsh, born in 1842, baptised by the Reverend Sunderland, went to school because Sunderland wasn't just the vicar, he was also the headmaster of Penistone Grammar School. John Marsh eventually is linked with several football clubs in Sheffield. He took part in the Uden Cup, the world's first adult knockout cup competition, preceding the FA Cup by 4 years. Marsh narrowly missed winning the cup. The cup was won by the Hallam Club, and John Charles Shaw happened to be the captain of the Hallam Club and carried away the prize of the Uden Trophy. 2 Penistone men involved in this very, very prestigious knockout tournament. John Marsh then went on to form the Wednesday Club, which then became the Sheffield Wednesday Club, and he continued to play his football being linked with the Wednesday Club. In 1868, the year after the club was formed, there was another knockout tournament called the Cromwell Cup. The Wednesday Club were the winners, and John Marsh carried off the Cromwell Cup. So the Uden Cup, very prestigious tournament, very prestigious cup, lifted by John Charles Shaw, Penistone man. The Cromwell Cup, lifted and carried off by John Marsh, another Penistone man. So the pedigree of the Penistone football already is beginning to establish itself. John Marsh went on to captain the Sheffield Association football team against Glasgow in front of 10,000 people. That was the last game that John Marsh played at the highest level. After that, he retired from that level of football, and he'd been recalled back to his native Thurleston to help run the Crystal Palace pub. And as soon as he arrived, he established the Thurleston Crystal Palace Football Club.
He was a very, very good footballer. He contributed to the creation of the football in Sheffield, and then he had a tragic end to his life, and he was only 37. In my opinion, the most famous person that we have buried in the churchyard.
When Steve told me that the first captain and founder of Sheffield Wednesday was buried in the churchyard, I couldn't believe it. And I've told so many Sheffield Wednesday fans the same, and people who I know from Sheffield have come over to see the grave. You know, I've lived here all my life, and here we are, the most influential characters right in my own churchyard, and I didn't even know.
John Marsh's legacy lives on. The establishing of the Thurleston Crystal Palace football team ultimately led to association football filtering through to the area. And basically, 1906, with the founding of the Penistone Church Football Club, it has its links, directly linked to John Marsh returning back to the area in 1874. John Ness Dransfield wrote a prodigious amount of diaries. He created scrapbooks of which we managed to glean quite a lot of this information from. He bequeathed them to Penistone in the original library, the Carnegie Library. Now, I've spent a great deal of time looking through the material there, and whilst I was looking through one of his scrapbooks, I came across 2 letters that he'd put into these scrapbooks that absolutely blew me away. One letter was inviting him to play football for the Sheffield Football Club, written in 1861. The significance of this is that I believe that these letters are the oldest adult football club letters in the world, and they were sitting in Penistone for over 150 years, probably looked at by people who leaf through the scrapbook, not realising the significance of it. This letter is priceless. It's Penistone's legacy. It's the history of the development of the modern game of football in this country, and something as significant as that was sitting in Penistone all that time. The modern game of association football. It belongs to Penistone.
The background to a football club, when you go down there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, is all these people preparing the ground, maintaining the stand, getting the kitchen ready for match day. And these are all volunteers, and we need to remember that. And when we watch football, that this club has been going on for now over 150 years. Without these people, they would never exist.
Clearly, Arthur Spinner Lee is a central pillar to where the club is now. So his story is essential.
Penniston knows a lot to Spinner Lee because he was creative, he got things done, he got things going.
I think it was the character, and you know, in 1981 I ran out to referee the FA Cup final, and one of the thoughts was Spinner Lee.
He never charged us to go in, you could watch, but he expected you to buy a Bovril. At least spend some money at the counter.
Without those type of people, football would not be where it is today. Because 1 minute he's pushing this bloody cast iron piece of equipment that spills lime all over the place, and the next thing he's pumping air into the ball and throwing it at you saying, is that okay? And when you said no, it needs a bit more in, there would be this disdain look on his face of like, you know, I've actually supported you and now you're telling me that I've not put enough air in the ball. But then there'd be a knock on the door and a cup of tea.
During Arthur Lee's time, you know, taking hold of the old workmen's huts at Dumford Bridge and transporting it over so it becomes a pavilion at the club. This is what grassroots football is about.
You know, the hard time when Penniston Church were on its knees, and we go back to David Hampshire, you know, I don't think people know how the club survived in the 70s and 80s. Because if it hadn't been for people like Dave Hampshire and Terry Lyles, the club would have died. The history would have died. And the only reason that club is here today because they put their own personal money to save the club. So, you know, there's inspirational characters everywhere, but the club is only here today because of those two.
You know, more recently with Dave Hampshire's time and efforts in deciding that there was a time when the club could move to a new level. That's a big decision for a club to make.
I think through the work of David Hampshire today, the club is far, far more part of the community now, an essential part of the community, even to the point where they're wearing the club shirts, the logo in Penniston itself. It's great to see.
That's who I'd like to meet, Spinner Lee. I'd love for Spinner to come back and see what we've got. Peter says, I wish my dad could come and see what you've done there.
He'd be proud of you.
Yeah, well, that's what Peter said. But
he would be.
I said, it's not pat on back I'd want. I just want him to see where we've gone from when he left to where we are now. You know the floodlights? We got him in 2004 and it was one of the proudest days of my life. Because I never ever thought that Penniston Church would have floodlights. No. When you talked about, well, will we ever get, church will never have floodlights, will they? You know, and when I took over, I was putting money in my son and said it was just to keep us afloat. Floodlights were a million miles away.
The club is a community club.
Yeah.
Yeah, it covers all ages, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know. I mean, Spinner would be proud. I hope that people read this book and find out the amount of time, effort and commitment that has to be put in to all these football clubs in every league where it's run on volunteers. Steve himself has brought these people back to life, and we're bringing the history back to life in Penniston.
All the profits that come into this are going to the club. None of the people that I've mentioned will receive anything out of this except the pleasure of having created this story and brought these people's work to life. But you also need to have people as dedicated as Kevin and Richard, to be honest, who are prepared to put that time and effort in and believe that this story is to be told.
As I drive down from Hoyle and Swain roundabout and I see that grey stone slab with minuscule letters of Penistone written on it, so you have to squint to actually see, well, Penistone is it? Can you imagine? Welcome to Penistone, the cradle of the modern game of association football.
I want people to have a feeling like I have, that we've found something special.
It's not just the history of the club, it's the history of Penistone. And it's got so much to offer, so much to contribute.
You look back to 1906 when it started, and those fields, they were fields, not football pitches. You know, it's a history, isn't it? It's a history to be told and measured and written about. And we hope the book will just bring it all back to life.